Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Neal, and I am the president of NAMIC Atlanta. And for those who aren't aware, NAMIC stands for the National Association of Multi-Ethnicity in Communication. And I would love to welcome you to our third annual Trends in Technology. Now, we're live today, and although we may not be able to entertain questions because we have a full slate of conversation for you, we do have chat, and we do encourage that you use it as often as possible. Throw in feedback, give us ideas that you may want us to share later on in terms of different trends and technologies, or even speakers for that matter. Now, before we really jump in here, I would love to reach out to a NAMIC family member, Javita Moore. We hope that you're healing well. We hope that you're healing well, and our prayers go out to you. So, with that said, I am, old enough to remember the Jetsons, the original Star Trek, and even as we started to morph into the Matrix, and I'm even willing to admit that I did watch Ready Player One. And for most of us, we consider that entertainment. But when you look at corporate America, they didn't look at it as entertainment. They saw it as big business. And look at where we are now. From the Jetsons, you have flying cars, prototype, but they're flying. From Star Trek, you had the replicators. Well, we now have 3D printing. And then when you start looking at the Matrix and Ready Player One, you can make that shift that we have AI in robotics and other applications. And then you have virtual reality as well as augmented reality. And so whenever you start looking and saying we have big business in the room, well, at that point, you're also going to get executives in the room who are going to figure out how to enable the average consumer and corporate America to utilize this, not just for making money, but to make our lives better, to be more efficient in our practices in our everyday life. And so when we look at executives, we have an awesome suite for you. Today, I'm going to introduce our first executive panelist, and the easiest way for me to do that is to read what his boss said. His boss being Sean Combs, by the way. My vision for Revolt was always to build the world's largest Black-owned media company, powered by the smartest young executives from the culture. And so I present to you Detavio Samuels, Mr. 40 Under 40. He is the CEO for REVOLT Media. Next up is Richard Cox, who is the Chief Information Officer and SVP for COX Enterprises. Now, Richard, he provides oversight and direction to the corporate business leaders in the area of data analytics, business intelligence, security, and tech services. He was also previously the COO for the city of Atlanta, and he had various other presidents, roles, and VP roles. And he also serves on the board for Year Up, and I believe he was on the board for the previous Super Bowl that was held here in Atlanta and various other community organizations. And last but certainly not least is Sanjay Srivastiva. Now, Sanjay is the Chief Digital Officer for GENPACT, and he oversees their AI, the analytics, automation, and digital tech services. But there's still more to him. Sanjay is a serial entrepreneur. He had 4 startups that he took from inception to being stabilized, and they were eventually all bought out. One by Akamai, another one by BMC, FIS, and finally GENPACT. And Sanjay routinely contributes to Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, the MIT Tech articles that he puts in place. And then he's also been looked at as one of the top 10 digital transformational influencers to follow. And so, gentlemen, I welcome you to Trends in Technology. Now, in preparing for this this conversation, I stumbled upon an article that I read this morning coming out of Yahoo Finance that said that in the next 5 years, when you look at the impact of virtual reality, it should be $100 billion industry. Not just VR in terms of gaming, but when you look at the hardware, the software, the content, services, and applications. And I was saying to myself, that's a ridiculously high number. And then I looked at Verizon's study, and they said 179 billion. So there's a variance in there. And when I look at that, Detavio, I want to look at you first. We had a conversation a few months back talking about virtual reality, and we were looking at the gaming aspect of it. But in that conversation, you saw so much more. So what's your vision for Revolt Media as it pertains to virtual reality as a platform that can be utilized?
Yeah, Charles, I think for us, VR is a super exciting opportunity, actually. So often, Black America feels like we are left behind on things before they explode. I think VR is an opportunity for us to actually get in and ride that wave. And so we look at it in terms of how can we help usher Black America and the hip hop world into the world of VR? And we think about it in kind of three different ways. The first one is Revolt is a platform for creators, right? We are unleashing and unlocking Black creativity with the power of our green light power and resources. And so the first place we're looking at is who are the Black creators in the VR XR world that we can partner with to create amazing content. When you think about VR's ability to register empathy for people in situations like in the world that we live in right now, right, where Black Lives Matter, and even if you just think about what happened last night, right, we're all going to fight and debate about the merits of a lot of these activities. But if you think about the opportunity to put people in an immersive world where they can feel and generate empathy from sitting on the other side, we see that as an exciting opportunity. If you can think about people's opportunity to, watch Travis Scott from the comfort of their home without having to worry about paying a bunch of costs, travel, worrying about the germs you get from a global pandemic, we see a huge opportunity. So the first thing is, how do we partner with creators to unlock a plethora of content designed for Black folks in the hip hop world? The second one for us is, how do you train Black creators and Black developers so that they can, so that there are more people ready to compete in the space? And so right now we're having conversations around potentially creating an XR kind of innovation lab where we're training developers and storytellers to work in these types of formats. And then the last one is, how do we just generate awareness amongst the community? Right now, I believe that so many people believe that VR is not accessible, whether it's because of cost, or sometimes I think people think that it's not ready in terms of content. I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of letting people know that the cost of VR has significantly come down. And the world that exists right now in terms of content on the gaming side, on the video side, is all really exciting. And so for us, it's kind of those three pieces. Let's unlock the current creators in the space. Let's build up the next generation so that there's more to impact. And then three, let's generate awareness amongst our community so that we can all get in the game together.
Awesome. Now, when I look back at some of the conversation we had, there was a portion where we looked at, say, for example, concerts. When you looked at the ability, so for example, esports is, I think, projected to be about 1.6 billion either in 2021 going into 2022. Do you foresee a situation where, because you're all about content, right? You have entertainers, celebrities in all genres that, are about culture. What types of, and I don't want, if I'm going into your secret sauce on how you're going to do your business in the future, then shut me down. But I can see areas where you're putting on goggles and you're just augmenting today's world to a future world where it's super immersive. You have a basketball league or series, if I remember seeing correctly. How does that play into it? When you look at esports, where people may be driving cars, etc., there's a litany of use cases that you have at your fingertips that walk yourself into that 100 billion to 179 billion. Any tea leaves you want to throw at us at ideas you may be looking at?
Yes, I mean, even when you think about esports, so a large part of what Revolt is doing right now is trying to identify those places where there are inequities. Hint, hint, they're everywhere. And then partnering with brands who have passion points for those spaces, and then trying to come up with solutions that help fix those inequities. So one of the biggest things that we're working with brands right now is the launch on something that we're calling the Revolt House, the Revolt Gaming House, where essentially what you see right now is so often esports centers whiteness, right? And a lot of these esports players that are winning in terms of audience size are going to continue to win because they've got the big audience, so they continue to get the coolest tools, the coolest trailers, the coolest products early. We're trying to create a house with people of color where we can bring the full power of hip hop, sports, etc. Help these young people build up their followings. We're going to use our power to go to the brands and say, give us these trailers and these products early for these young people, and let's build them up. And it'll happen in esports, it'll happen in the VR world, and it'll happen in, you know, all of the places where we think we need to elevate and push our culture and our people.
Got it. And I do appreciate that point that you made earlier about, you know, figuring out how individuals will be able to monetize it from a working perspective, you know, that education that builds you into work. Now, Richard, if I could pull you in on this, right? Because there was an article that came out that Morehouse is partnering with Victory XR as well as Qualcomm, right? And so as I say these names, Verizon and Qualcomm, these are not small, you know, 100 billion to 179 billion. These are not small, you know, just futuristic pie in the sky numbers and companies any longer. And so when we start to look at your role as a chief information officer, you know, distance learning and other use cases have to come into play, right? I mean, a headset costs now about $300. A ticket round trip from here to Cali costs $300, but you can keep the headset, you know, with you afterwards. So how are you thinking about implementing it into the enterprise culture?
It's a great question, and I love the fact that you started the question mentioning Morehouse, and I think you know I'll kind of start there, and I'll give a shout out to the AU Center. They are right now building a data science department, and it will be collective. And if you think about VR, the underpinnings inevitably will rely on AI, and data scientists is at the foundation of that. So really excited about that potential partnership with the AU Center. And that takes me to let's start with Morehouse. So they have a medical school. And so when you look at the use cases, some of the most interesting, I would say in the immediate term, they may have some of the most interesting use cases. As an example, right now at Case Western, they are using 3D human anatomy to go through classes where in the past they would actually have to perform a procedure on a live person or a cadaver. Now they can use VR to actually go through that and think about the reps that you get over and over. And then when you think about another interesting use case, and this one hits home for me, there is a company that uses AR tracking to locate veins when they are about to go through IV procedures. And my father is on dialysis. And so I know in a real way how impactful that can be in terms of just precision and pain relief. So these use cases are here right now. And to answer your question in terms of distance learning, it is growing in real time. And I think it could be, when we think about the Black community, it can create a greater chasm, or it can really be an equalizer. And I think that the question really becomes access. And so there are a load of schools now really leaning into distance learning. So I think lives are changed by the people you meet, the places you go, and the books you read. And many in the inner city, they can't go places. But if we can bring these experiences to them via distance learning in a really immersive way, that could be a game changer. And to put it in perspective, the spend in education on VR in 2018 was just over 800 million, and is projected to be 5.5 billion by 2023. And so this is happening in real time. And I think there are huge opportunities for sure.
Sanjay, when we look at this, and I want to pull you in as our uber technical SME here. When we look at, virtual reality, and we start to think about how artificial intelligence comes into play, how you look at cloud computing, how that comes into play, I would have to imagine that without it, adoption rates will be a lot lower than with it. How does these technologies help enable adoption from your perspective?
That's a great question. Sorry, I was in mute. It's a great question, Charles. Thanks for teeing that up. Before I go there, I just want to underscore Richard, what you said, because in large enterprises, one of the biggest things we're seeing is the need for learning. I saw this recent research that talked about the half-life of knowledge is a few years now, and that's super scary. For me, it means almost half of what I know now is going to be completely redundant. And so the opportunity is the other half that I need to learn. How do I get to that? And this is a challenge for us personally. This is an opportunity for all of us personally. And I think across the corporate world, it's one of the largest things in boards' minds, which is how do we reskill for the new, for the new normal, for the world to come. And I think the applicability of VR in terms of a very immersive experience that allows us to learn fast. Look at my kids, I have 2 teenager boys, and I see the way they consume content, and I see the way they learn education, and I see the way they go to school. It's very different from the way I went to school. And in that new world, this immersive content is the right way to actually address this learning gap that we have. And so I just want to reinforce that point, because one of the largest opportunities we have is to use a more immersive, a more engaging capability that is now prevalent and very well available to be able to drive learning across all of our personal lives and across the corporate world. To your question, look, I think cloud in the distributed computing it has enabled, and therefore the ability to compute at the edges, which is really a little bit of what's happening over here. Data, which gives you the underlying foundation, so you actually have the knowledge and the metadata to be able to deliver the knowledge. And then AI that allows you to supplement that with more immersive ways of actually getting engaged, of gaming the viewer and engaging him or her in a way that allows them to drive more retention of knowledge, right? Those things become very important. And we see all 3 of those trends converging with VR, particularly as VR goes into AR augmented reality, and it's becoming a large phenomenon in the industry around us.
Got it. Richard, let me come back to you for 1 second. Because we did talk about how AI and cloud, VR may be pervasive in the consumer and in schools. How do you see it playing out in enterprise companies, organizations?
Yeah, great question. So just to kind of take a step back and help people understand COX Enterprises. So we are a $20 billion organization. We have most known likely by our communications group. So we are the 3rd largest cable provider in the United States. Then we have COX Automotive, which really is a collection of companies across the entire auto ecosystem. So think about Kelley Blue Book, Auto Trader, and then underlying software that supports dealerships as well as the largest auction. And then we're always looking for what's next. And so I think the way we will play will be across the board. So as an example, one of the things that went really well for us during the pandemic is the acceleration of our self-installs on the cable side. I could see where AR, VR in the future will take a more prominent role as we think about how to make things easier for our customers. COX Automotive, we made a huge transition to digital. So people had to physically be at the auctions in the past. And I think the more we mature our digital capabilities, again, another huge opportunity for VR. And then finally, in these other areas, we're always looking for what's next. We actually are the majority owner in an esports company, the Atlanta Reign. Shout out to Atlanta Reign. They are obviously, by definition, using that technology. But we are also on the lookout for companies and spaces that we think we can play in over the longer term. And so I think there are going to be a host of those opportunities over the next, particularly 3 to 5 years.
Got it. Now, Sanjay, when Richard just brought that up, it just reminded me that GENPACT, you guys sponsor a car team, right? I can't remember if it was EV or if it was VR.
It's in the e-racing circuit, and it's a car team called the Envision Virgin Racing car team. E-racing is obviously super interesting field of in its own right, not only because of all of the fun and thrill of being at a car racing event, but actually really thinks and gets us into sustainability in the long run. And the work that we do today in developing new AI algorithms that allow you to optimize battery performance and really win at these races is actually the technology that will eventually start getting into cars, and it'll be the future of e-mobility. And so we're proud to be involved in that activity. We do a lot of work around the data, the analytics, the cloud, the AI side of the house, in helping teams win. It's just been a fantastic arrangement for us. So yeah, big shout out there.
Got it. And so I want to pivot us over to cyber for a second. Our Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, he came out and said that the biggest risk to the U.S. economy was cyber threat, in his opinion. And that's big when you look and say we have a pandemic going on, you have social unrest going in there. To say that the cyber threat to him would be the biggest risk out there. But I can see it because, you know, in that same article, they listed the ability for a state-sponsored actor or an individual with, I guess, a lot of computing power to be able to knock down certain portions of, whether it be an electrical grid or communications network, et cetera, that would then stop payments or affect records, et cetera. And so, Richard, when you were the chief operating officer for the city of Atlanta, I think it was like your first weekend, you had this as an issue. Can you give us a little detail on it?
Yes, I can, and I'll kind of share the story by way of how I was feeling. So put yourself in this position. I have made the decision to go help our newly elected mayor of the city of Atlanta, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Cox was gracious enough to allow me to be an executive on loan, so scheduled to be there about a year. And literally on day 3, I'm driving to City Hall. This is my third day headed to my new office, and I get a call from the CIO, the interim CIO, saying, "Hey, Richard, no big deal. We have a virus. You're new. I just, ordinarily wouldn't give you a heads up, but just want you to know we're working on it. Should be a non-issue." 2 hours later, we realized it was much more than a non-issue. And it ended up being the largest cyber ransomware attack to a U.S. municipality. And I think even up until now. And so we found out that it was widespread. There were media reports of the actual screenshot of the cyber request, and it was for $51,000 in Bitcoin. And one could argue you pay them and go about your lives, but Mayor Bottoms has a different perspective, one that I value greatly. And I'll share a quick story, and I'll land it with this. As we were working with the FBI, Homeland Security, I had talked to municipalities that had been hit before, and I gave her the recommendation we should pay. She looked at me and she said, "Richard, where did you go to high school?" And it was the most odd question because we actually went to the same high school, Frederick Douglass High School on the west side of Atlanta. And I said, "I went to Douglass." And she said, "Well, where I went to high school, we don't pay people that steal from you." And so she was emphatic on the fact that we weren't paying. And let me tell you, it ended up being the best decision that we made. We were able to really take care of our citizens in the community by going to manual processes. It took us about 3 weeks to get back up 100%. We fortified the infrastructure, and I am convinced that if we didn't do that, our Super Bowl would not have been the tremendous success that it was. So it was a very challenging situation. And what we know now is that there are well-organized entities that look at this as a way of life. And so as organizations, we have to be on the forefront of protection each and every day.
Thank you. Understood. When we look at artificial intelligence and cloud in the area of cyber threats, I didn't realize that, your biometric reader had AI as a foundation. I didn't realize that natural language processing was a subset of risk mitigation deterrence for it. And so I look at AI having a lot of practical use cases as it pertains to it, because now you're able to look at and read a ton of articles or natural language publications, see if you have anything being inserted or taken away, right? Also, when you start looking at cloud, I look at that as a gift and a curse, right? You have the capability of having a bunch of infrastructure that would normally be on-prem now be off-prem. And this isn't just for enterprise, because now you're talking about your personal use as well, right? Normally you would have to purchase a bunch of computers or servers to have on-prem. And now you say, all right, I'm going to Amazon, or I'm going to a said company. And in doing so, you're hoping that their practices, and for the most part, I assume they are in place that will allow that threat to be mitigated, the risk of that threat to be mitigated. But we do see every once in a while where there's a hack that says, well, 500 million of these or that, has been taken and redistributed. And so, Sanjay, talk us through, from a, from the standpoint, not necessarily from GENPACT standpoint, but more so from, an ideation perspective, a thought leadership perspective. How does this fit in?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I think you're right to point out AI is a tremendous asset. And I think you pointed out it's kind of the eyes and ears that we use to detect these things, right? With natural language now being human grade, above human grade, computer vision being almost human grade, you can kind of spot these things and literally have eyes and ears in all the right places. But I think the thing I want to point to with AI is actually something else where I think the largest opportunities lie, and that's this thing about weak link analysis, right? So one of the best things we're finding with AI is that it can spot those hidden weak links. The human mind can look at a set of data, and you can find a pattern, right? But you can only find it in data that is so large, so big. When you start expanding that data pool, when you start going really deep in that data set, right, our ability to spot those links, those patterns actually decreases significantly. And one of the best examples and use cases we're finding in AI is actually that weak link analysis. It's finding those very weak patterns that are there, that are pointing to something else, that is actually going to lead to something else in the future. And you detect that early, you can actually jump on it right away. And I think therein we're finding with anomaly detection, with link analysis, some of the best use cases in AI with cybersecurity. Look, broadening to the question you asked, I think the way I think we should all think about cybersecurity is, if I leave you with three things, it'd be this. I think the first one really is you can't do it alone, right? There is no company, no human being, no organization that is an island anymore. You're connected with partners, suppliers, customers, regulators, government. There's all sorts of connections and back and forth, and you've got so much stuff coming back and forth electronically, whether it's invoices or contracts and so on and so forth. And one of the first things you have to do is think about yourself as in a connected economy and partner very collaboratively with the rest of the ecosystem to think about a joint effort as opposed to a singular, like an island sort of an effort. Those things never lead to success. And so that's one thing that I would kind of point out, all of us to be in the mindset of how do we partner in the ecosystem and bring more people into the fold so we actually increase our combined overall cybersecurity. I think the second thing that is super important is, and I talked about AI and we're very passionate about applying technology, AI, analytics, all sorts of business applications. But the one thing I want to point out is the last mile is actually down to that human, the individual that actually responds to that email and the phishing attack that comes through. And so really that's about keeping your guards up. That's about training. That's about reminding. That's about reinforcing. That's about running these exercises and actually staying on top of that and making sure you've got the last mile fully covered. Clearly you'll take care of some of the technology bits before that, but that last mile is very important, and don't take your eyes off of that. Probably the third thing I'll say, and this is really a humbling statement, is this is a job that is never done. So if you ever come across a chief security officer, information security officer that says, well, we did this and we did that and we're through it, and boy, we got to a good point in life, and I feel like the job's done, they don't know what they're talking about. This is changing by the day. The threat surfaces are significantly sort of morphing into new things. And it's a job that is never really done. And having a mindset around that and being ever vigilant and ever sort of expanding the footprint of what we do in the context of cybersecurity is the only way to sort of persist in the world that is coming to be.
You know what? So what blew my mind was hackers will use AI against their logic, their own logic, to see whether or not their malware or ransomware can stand up to different attacks. I was blown away at the ability for the individuals who are looking at doing malicious harm and damage. They're using the technology to better their craft, right? And so we have to be just that much more vigilant on our side to stay ahead of it. That, you know, they said, if I remember correctly, imagine having an AI malware algorithm that could consistently evolve and counterattack anything that we put in place to sniff it out. That has to give people nightmares who are in the industry, you know, in terms of how do we stay ahead, one step ahead of. And so I get it. It's not an easy job for a CIS or a CIO to have to look at. Detavio, when we go back down to the consumer level, you have the ability to look at, well, not even look at, to broadcast out the message that says, this is what you need to do to protect yourself. How is Revolt Media looking to take the lead in that kind of space?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and it's a responsibility that we understand. We understand that if we're going to get people excited about the fact that young kids can now go to Disneyland without, you know, the cost issue, and that if we want young kids to experience an African safari or the Louvre without the cost, that while we educate them on the benefits, we also have to educate them on the risk. And some of the kind of risks that are super important to us just has to do with, you know, one of the big ones is data. Right. So, of course, in the same way that people are hacking and stealing your information while you're shopping online at Target, they're going to be able to do this in these immersive worlds. But even more importantly, this idea that the device is always recording your audio and has the potential to record the video around your house. You're literally sending real-time signals around what's exactly happening in your house in the moment. And we need our people to understand that. I think the other two that we think about a lot is just the fact that these experiences are fully immersive. So being hijacked on your phone or being hijacked on your computer is different when you're being hijacked and people are interrupting an experience that you're fully in. And then the last one, which is not necessarily cybersecurity, but is a security threat, I think, for a lot of folks, specifically Black folks, which is just racism, right? And so we know that racism has existed in things like esports, et cetera. And so it's going to find our way as we're playing games with people all across the world. And so we have to educate our people on these risks. We have to prepare them for what's possible on the other side. And I think, you know, the way we're going to do it is the way that Revolt always does it. We will use the full power of our platform. So that means in TV, digital, social events, right, we'll be generating this information. But it also means that from a Revolt standpoint, we're going to do what we always do, which is leverage the power of hip hop. So how do you begin to deliver these messages through some of the biggest names and the biggest celebrities in the hip hop world, in the hip hop arena? And then the last one is we have a hit show called Revolt Black News, which solely exists to educate Black people on information and solutions that they need to understand the world around them. And so, you know, we'll be dedicating segments and having experts, probably like some of the folks on this Teams call right now, to come on and talk about, again, both the benefits, but the risk of stepping into those VR worlds.
Got it. Sanjay, if I could pivot back over to you for a second, when you're ideating with your team and you guys are looking at trends that are out there, you know, for me, I know we talked before and I said blockchain, right? I'm enthralled by blockchain in terms of not just the cryptocurrency aspect of it, but just in some cases the empowerment that it gives to entertainers, people who own content, where it says, you know, as you sell it, any subsequent sell person gets profit off of, you know, the ability to not be able to crack a code as easy as. And so that's where my brain goes as one of my topics that I'm going to utilize in the future. But right now, you consult, and GENPACT consults to many large companies. If you were saying these are the trends that you see on the horizon, whether it's in the entertainment or the enterprise business circle, what would be those trends that you would say, hey, you know, while I'm talking to CEO, I'm talking to a CIO, these are the trends that I see or GENPACT sees that you should be aware of?
Well, Charles, look, I think blockchain is an interesting one to start with, just because, and actually it's important to double click on blockchain because the technology is fantastic, and it's, you know, we can spend time just talking about how cool the technology is. But move away from that for 1 second. What is the real opportunity with blockchain? And I think I'll tell you it's this. It's the ability to fundamentally go change the way business gets done, right? Is to fundamentally transform the way you and I interact and transact and get commerce done. And that's the real opportunity. The technology is just a means to the end. Now, by the way, I'm a technologist, and I will spend the rest of our time together just talking a little bit about why that technology is so exciting. But I don't want to lose the point that in the end, it's not necessarily just about the technology, it's about how you put it to use. And so therein, sort of as we, you know, look, we serve some of the largest corporations around the world. We help them digitally transform their business operations front to back. We help them think through supply chain and regulatory compliance and financial crimes and finance and accounting and just core functions. And we look at how do you take all of that and how do you digitize it in a way that you drive better value. And I think in that world, one of the areas I'd want to spend a few minutes on is actually just cloud. Now, cloud we've all heard about, and it's been around for a while, and we're sort of all users of it. I mean, just right now, we're using the cloud for me to speak with you, right? But if you get beyond all of that, right, and think about the 6, 7, maybe almost 8-year journey, I think together we've been on. You look, the start of the cloud was very simple. It was a cost efficiency play. It was the idea of, do you really want to be in the business of setting up your own data center? Is that really going to be a competitive advantage as a company? And so why are you doing that? Why don't you outsource it? Why don't you move it onto the cloud? You reduce the operating cost, you get better efficiency, you've got better control. You know, it's a great way to sort of, you know, then reinvest in your core business and get to be better and build a durable advantage in what you really do. And so fundamentally, the start of cloud was, it's elastic, it's lots of compute, and it's efficient. And so why don't we take advantage of that? I think what's happening is that story has changed across the corporate world. And I think what we're finding now is that cloud's no longer just about efficiency or about effectiveness or about reducing costs or about taking this off your balance sheet. It's really about modernizing. It's about simplifying your application stack. And you ask why? Why has that happened? Well, partly in the pandemic and post the pandemic, we've come to realize that what we do as a corporations, frankly, what do we do as human beings, what we do as workers has fundamentally come to change. I mean, I'm basically in my home office speaking with you over a Zoom call, a Teams call. It was very different from how I would have done it maybe 3 years ago when we would have traveled and probably met in person. And so the point is, in this new normal, as businesses readjust, as medicine, telemedicine in the United States has gone from 6%, I think, 3 to 6% to 100% overnight. You think about retail, think about all those in-store trade promotions that we're used to. Now we're talking about curbside pickup, and on and on and on. You go across industries, the way we do business has changed, and the value we deliver fundamentally has to evolve. And as that happens, you need a new technology backplane. You need the ability to build this capability very quickly so you can deliver it to the industry. And one of the reasons cloud has come to be as important and as significant as it is become the new technology backplane. Not because of the efficiency, not because of the elasticity, not just because it has all the compute that we have there. It's because the innovation in composable services, these little building blocks, these little kernels, if you will, think about them as Lego blocks, right? You can take these Lego blocks and assemble them into new things. And all of that innovation is now coming around in the cloud. And corporations across the world are able to take those little building blocks and build new functionality, new capability that allow them to respond to the market fast, that allow them to bring new offerings in the market, that allow them to actually become more sticky in the experiences they deliver on the long run, and therefore grow in this pandemic. And so I do think that the pandemic has shifted the lens a little bit. And I think it's been a massive acceleration on the cloud journey, but it's not a journey of cost reduction. It's a journey of simplification, it's a journey of modernization, it's a journey of revenue growth. And we see a lot there. And then of course, around that, then the entire enterprise architectures are changing. The way CIOs think about, what role the cloud has to play is evolving, and how they think about their own enterprise architecture. So we're getting into slimmer cores. The things we used to do in the past, take all of that stuff, bundle it into a core, and then slim it down and slim it down further and slim it down further. That's the slim core. It's a set of system of records, you leave it as is. And now we're surrounding it with a data layer that allows us to do these new things. We're surrounding it with a systems of engagements layer that allow you to give these bridge capability, these fill in the gap things that you need to be able to respond to the new normal. And then we're delivering so many microservices that are coming on the back of the cloud. So I'm super passionate on this topic because I think we have the opportunity to really just overhaul all of the mess we've created, and for once get this right. And I'm keen on, and I speak and I spend a lot of time on this, and I worry a lot about sort of how we learn through all of this. And I think the key thing there is taking advantage of the opportunity ahead of us, thinking about responding to the pandemic, not as how am I resilient? How do I respond? It's about how do I grow through it? How do I get to be a better company through it? How do I persevere in the long run? And I think the cloud is going to become a really important part of that equation.
Got it. So I do have a question from a member in the audience, and it says, Sanjay and Richard, each of you presented a situation where you experienced security vulnerabilities. What example do you have where you think security is not handled appropriately from your perspective, and what type of leader does it take to make the right next steps? So
yeah, I'll just go quick. I wasn't speaking about anything related to the company I'm currently at, so I was speaking more in general. But I think the number one thing that I think is important in a leader for security, that runs security, that thinks about security, is humility. It's curiosity and this ever-learning mindset. Because I tell you, this threat surface is changing so fast, and it's getting so much deeper, that what we know today will not suffice in the future. And remaining humble, having a curiosity-driven mindset about learning more and approaching sort of this thing with this threat surface with a mindset of getting the right partnership, the right advice, the right transparent collaborative engagement is key to success. And so I kind of leave you with that one trait I think is super important in chief information security officers.
Yeah. Richard, do you want to jump in there?
Absolutely, Charles. Let me say, I think Sanjay really nailed it. And even earlier, the comment he made in terms of if you have a security person and they say we've arrived, you need to go get another one tomorrow, because it's exactly what he said. And I would add, this concept that transcends technology of having a growth mindset. I think it is incredibly important. And that is, this idea of living in a continuous improvement environment and knowing that you never arrive, you're always getting better. And particularly as it relates to security, to your point, Charles, look, the bad guys are using AI to make sure that their technology is foolproof. Like, let that sink in. And then think about this. One of the biggest threats are actually nation states funding these organizations. So not only are they sophisticated, they're well funded. And so this is incredibly important to really understand that security is everyone's job. And in corporations, in fact, the biggest threat are phishing emails, is literally clicking links. And so you could have the best CISO and CIO in the world. If someone clicks a link, you could be toast. And so I think it's really educating that it's everyone's responsibility. And then there's one thing that Sanjay said that got me so excited. I want to just make a quick comment, and that is the way that the cloud can be exploited, particularly as it relates to our earlier conversation with VR. Look, I think 5G is going to be incredible, because if you think about some of the impediments to the adoption of VR that is happening quickly, you think about the bulkiness of some of the headsets as an example. Well, think about an environment where a wearable, as we have 5G, can attach directly to the cloud. And so all of a sudden, the ability to develop and innovate becomes so much easier. And then it also accelerates the adoption as well. Sanjay got excited. It got me excited. I wanted to share that as well.
So Detavio, somebody said that you had mentioned individuals coming in and getting, I guess, into the ground floor. How does REVOLT Media look at trying to get individuals into a career framework around whether it be cyber as it pertains to your organization or virtual reality as it pertains to some of the events that you're looking at having in the future?
Yes, I think we're thinking about that in kind of two ways. One, right now, outlining a strategic partnership with a brilliant Black entrepreneur, technologist, who has a foundation where he is training Black and brown people in the worlds of VR, XR, coding, et cetera. And he's doing it for free. And so looking to see if that's an opportunity where we can partner and again, start to help increase the amount of people of color who are prepared to have careers in this space. The second one is, again, looking at another potential partnership with one of the guy who I believe the dopest dude who I know, a Black brother that I know in VR out here in LA. And again, working with him to see if there's a world where we can create some sort of a REVOLT innovation lab. And the world and the idea that we could be helping corporate America and Fortune 500 companies hack and solve some of their biggest problems with people of color who are learning this business for free is super exciting to us. And so on all parts, we just see ourselves as more than a linear network, more than a TV company. We see ourselves as active participants in this fight against racial inequality. And when you see worlds like this that are bubbling and you know that they're going to be big, we believe that there's a responsibility on our side to figure out how we can play our part. And so while I'll say that we're probably a little bit early in those conversations, the idea that those are places that we need to be, the idea that those could be real competitive advantages for us in the marketplace as well is a very real thing. And so excited about what we have potentially to come over the course of the next year.
So I know we're getting close to time, but you have an individual on this call who has an innovation lab. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it together because Sanjay, I saw your eye lift up where it says, I have an innovation lab, and in fact, GENPACT has an entertainment division as well. I think Rajesh Jha is in charge of that. And so there are a lot of tie-ins that this is what NAMIC is partially for. It's about networking. It's about, obviously the mentoring and sponsorship, but bringing people into the room where you have that ability to ideate and see what could be next steps. Because as you say, Detavio, it's no longer about just saying, hey, I'm an entertainment company. You have a mission that's larger than just entertainment that does feed in, and you have a platform that allows individuals to hear it and to see it. And all you're doing is expanding out naturally, and organically. And so there are individuals around you, whether you know them or not, or see them or not, that, hopefully we'll hear this in the rebroadcast or who are now, who will say, you know what? I see where you're looking at wanting to go. Let me just tap you on the shoulder and see how we can lean in on that. Before I give one more question that's out there. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say thank you for that. And I would love to have all of those conversations. Historically, we talk about how Black-owned media companies often operate out of scarcity. And so key to our strategy is the right strategic partners who can help us get quantum leaps fast. And so super excited about that and want to have conversations with folks like Sanjay after this.
Yeah. Before I give each of you guys your last word, any questions amongst yourselves? I will let you off the hook on that one. Hold on, another question just came in. Let me just see here.
I have so here's my quick question, and it may not be right, but I wonder if anyone else is looking into the world of NFTs and is playing in that space.
Non-fungible token. Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning earlier. Well, hold on. I'm going to be quiet and let you guys go.
Okay, looks like it's you.
Oh, well, I mean, from an investment standpoint and just, looking at where they're going with it, this is what we were talking about a few months back, and I see that that is resonating now, right? Because when you have athletes, basketball players, football players, etc., they can go and say, hey, this is my rookie card. I don't think people get it, right? The questions that individuals have and say, well, why would I buy this? I can go get that anywhere. Why do you have trading cards, right? Why do you have autographs? Because you want to say I have an original of something. And when people miss that concept, they keep on thinking too much about tangible, and they're not looking at the new paradigm of thought that says you can still have something that's unique, that's signed. In fact, you know it's so original. Why? Because it's encoded, and anytime it goes from place to place, to person hand, that encoding allows for you to know that it is the true original. And when people start to get a better understanding and hold up what you have that's tangible versus what may be in the virtual world, you know, my mind was blown when I saw people buying real estate online real. Now, when I say online, sorry, virtual real estate, not online real estate. There's a difference, right? And you know, I'm like, what in the world? And then I realized people are buying access, right? They say if you purchase real estate in this neighborhood in a virtual environment, every person that is in that ecosystem has access to each other because they live in that neighborhood. If you're not in that neighborhood, you don't have access to that neighborhood. And so whether that takes off and takes root or not, I don't know. But what I do know is I didn't know what Roblox was. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, but my 14-year-old does. And when I was talking to other people, they said my 5-year-old does. I know because I'm spending dollars weekly. And so I'm like, well, what are you spending dollars on? They're like, oh, they buy this and they buy that. So if you look at it and say you've captured a 5-year-old and a 14-year-old, and let's say that's 9 years of migration from 5 to 14, that 5-year-old is going to keep on, and if they keep on refining and getting it better, well, now you're having a different conversation as to what currency really means, what is endeared to, you know, Pokemon. I saw a neighbor of mine driving in the park looking for a Pokemon something. This was a couple years ago, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm looking for the blah blah blah, and I'm like, you're 55, 60 years old. What are you doing? It's very real to people, and so you can never put a value on what a person looks at as precious to them. And so all I'm saying now is that as I'm sitting back and watching, I'm seeing scenarios where we may not believe because we may not be passionate enough about, but the people who are, the 5-year-old who will be 10 and then 15 and 20 and 20, they have a different perspective than what we have. And we may just be the old people in the room, not realizing that transformation is happening in front of us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I forgot that you and I talked about NFTs months ago, but you're 1,000% right. You'll be happy to know that we're planning our first launch into that world in probably the next 6 to 8 weeks, right? Because we just want to get in the game and experiment and see what's going on. And I think it's exciting for all those reasons you just gave. It's also exciting because the opportunity for creators, right? That direct access to consumers to monetize their audiences, no middleman, the opportunity to get residual income as the thing continues to trade. And so again, like, we're looking at these spaces that look like pre-internet days, and if we can get Black folks into them early enough, right, we believe that there are ways for us to kind of ride that wave and build community wealth. And so excited about the world of NFTs. I'm with you. I don't know that they'll work forever, but I'm going to bet that they will. The last thing I'll say is, and you know, our people love the flex, the opportunity to see how you're going to be able to flex having that original LeBron James digital trading card in social media or in virtual reality, right? Like, when you start to think about how we combine these things, it begins to be really interesting. So excited to see where the world's going to take us.
Yeah, I'm happy you guys looked deeper into that, because when we first had the conversation, I didn't know if you'd be put off because, you know, of the I forgot you don't necessarily manage artists. So that aspect of it, when that went away, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is like gold. You know, to you, syndication is no longer what it used to be now that you have certain things in place, right? And so I just see a lot of potential that you guys have in front of you when you start looking at the new technologies and how it levels the playing field from what it used to be previously. Sanjay or Richard, you know, before we get out of here, any last words from you, individuals, gentlemen?
Sanjay, you want to go, and then I'll wrap it up?
Here's what I'll say. You know, we spent a lot of time on technology, and there's so many cool things that are happening. It's almost difficult to keep up, and so exciting. We think the largest opportunity is actually in the convergence of technology and other areas, other disciplines. And so we're big believers in bilinguality. We don't think the world needs more AI specialists necessarily. Obviously, we could use some. We don't necessarily just need more machine learning people. What we need is people that understand a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of finance, people that understand manufacturing and computer vision, people that understand weak link analysis and fraud, if you will. And it's this ability to bring two different disciplines together that leads to new innovative concepts. So we do a lot of work in our innovation lab, and it's not about new technology and cool technology. It's about the intersections between social disciplines, business requirements, different walks of life, and then putting technology in the middle of that. We just put people in a room together and try and think through, if the world changes, how does it change, and how do we actually plan for that? And so I just want to put a shout out, because many of us look at this and say, well, I am tech and I'm not tech, and so maybe this is not for me. That could not be farther from the truth. It doesn't matter if you're tech, it doesn't matter if you're non-tech, it doesn't matter if you are in finance or accounting, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the ability to bring two different disciplines together and capture the convergence, that intersection, and get that right. And so I just encourage everyone around us to really fully lean into what I think is one of the largest journeys we're going to go through in sort of the civilization in our lifetime, certainly for sure, which is this tech enablement of how and what we do. And so really keen to sort of follow up on that discussion if people are interested.
I appreciate that. I like that a lot. Richard, what do you have for us?
Well, really two quick things. The first one is a thank you. Sanjay, thank you for your impact and innovation. Detavio, thank you so much for your impact in our entire community. The passion shows in space, and really, really grateful for that. And Charles, thank you for leading sessions like this. Makes a really big difference. So I want to make sure that my gratitude goes out to everyone on the call. And then I'll wrap up with this. I mentioned growth mindset before. I think the biggest skill going forward is not technology, it's not finance, it's not operations. The biggest skill is the ability to learn and relearn, because the rate of change is happening so quickly. We have to get people in a position and a posture to understand that they can lean in and learn anything and practice that learning on a regular basis. And I will say there are organizations like Year Up, Perscolas, that are doing a really good job, particularly with minority men and women, really pointing them in the direction of where the puck will be in the future. So I think it's up to us collectively to make sure that we lean into learning.
Well, I appreciate you guys, because these were not easy conversations to have, where you can still have them and they not be so overly technical that your eyes gloss over, but still impactful. Because think about it, we've covered virtual reality, cyber threats, how AI and how cloud and then other topics intersect, not just in enterprise, but also down into the local community, how you build individuals up so that they can get their jobs, and complete their journeys within life. And maybe even made some contacts internally that will flourish into different ventures that could take place. And so I'm grateful to be able to have you guys in the room, to have these types of discussions, to be able to ideate on topics that are meaningful, that are trends in technology that will really push not just us as individuals, or let me say it differently, not just corporations, but us as individuals forward. So once again, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you to our audience. We appreciate you tuning in to our 3rd annual Trends in Technology. One big elephant in the room is that we're all a bunch of males sitting here talking, and I promise that this will not be the same next year. But thank you. God bless you.